In today's hyper-connected world, silence has become one of the most underrated forms of power. We live in an era where everyone is broadcasting their every move, every gym session, every business idea, every so-called grin moment. Social media has created a space where showing people what you're about to do has become more celebrated than actually doing it. And that's where most people fall into the trap. They feel like they're making progress simply by talking about it. They confuse validation for transformation. They think saying, "I'm working on something big," is the same as actually putting in the brutal, uncomfortable, daily grind that greatness requires. But those who are truly serious about changing their lives understand a truth that most ignore: silence is a weapon. A focused, disciplined, and silent person becomes unpredictable, dangerous. You don't know when they're working, how much they're improving, or how close they are to the goal. And that's the point. When you're silent, no one can interrupt your growth. No one can sabotage what they don't see coming. No one can inject their doubts, their fears, their small thinking into your vision. See, when you broadcast your every move, you open yourself up to influence. You say you're going to start a business and suddenly your cousin has an opinion, your old friend has doubts, and a stranger on the internet has something to say. All that noise gets in your head. You second guess yourself. You start overthinking. You lose momentum. But when you say nothing, you stay clear, you stay focused. Your energy isn't being drained by external opinions. It's being funneled inward into your work, your discipline, your mental toughness. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to become so good that they can't ignore you once it's done. The truth is, most people talk because they're looking for applause. They're not building for greatness. They're looking for comfort. They want someone to say, "That's awesome," before they've even taken the first step. But that quick hit of validation is a trap. It feels like progress. It feels like you're doing something, but it kills your hunger. It kills your urgency. Because once people clap, you start to relax. You start thinking you're already halfway there just because someone acknowledged your idea. That's not power. That's weakness disguised as achievement. Silence, on the other hand, builds pressure. Real pressure. It keeps you accountable to yourself, not the crowd. When no one knows your goals, no one's checking in, no one's cheering you on. It's just you and the work. That's how you build mental toughness. That's how you become relentless. You stop doing things for applause and you start doing them because it's who you are, because you made a decision, because you're done with excuses, because you're finally ready to become the person you've been pretending to be online. In 2025, being loud is easy. Everyone has a platform. Everyone can tweet, post, record, and share. But the truth is, very few are really doing the work behind the scenes. Very few are sacrificing sleep, pushing past pain, and outworking their former selves day after day. It's easy to be loud. It's easy to talk. But it takes something special to stay silent, put your head down, and grind when no one's watching. The strongest people in the room aren't the ones making the most noise. They're the ones listening, observing, taking notes, and executing in the dark. They know that every second spent explaining themselves is a second they could have spent sharpening their skill, improving their fitness, developing their mind, or advancing their mission. They've detached from the need for approval. They've moved past the desire for recognition. They're no longer moved by praise or broken by criticism. Their silence isn't passive. It's aggressive. It's focused. It's fueled by fire that no one can see, but that burns hotter than anyone could imagine. That's why in 2025, silence isn't just strength. It's strategy. It's control. It's protection. When you move in silence, you give yourself space to fail privately, to adjust without judgment, to grow without pressure. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe the world a roadmap. You owe yourself results. And those results don't come from likes, shares, or retweets. They come from hours and hours of unglamorous work, done in silence, in solitude, in pain, and in purpose. You have to ask yourself, do you want attention or do you want transformation? Because they rarely come together. If you want transformation, silence is your ally. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter is the moment you begin respecting your mission. The moment you stop posting and start producing is the moment you separate yourself from the pack. There's no power in being predictable. There's no glory in announcing every move. The most dangerous person is the one no one saw coming. The one who was counted out, overlooked, doubted, and stayed silent while building in the dark. That's the person you need to become in 2025. In a world obsessed with comparison, focusing on yourself has become a rebellious act of self-mastery. Every time you open your phone, someone else is showcasing their highlight reel, their six-pack abs, their new business, their perfect relationship, their glamorous lifestyle. And if you're not grounded in who you are, it's easy to get pulled into that vortex of comparison. You start questioning your own journey. You start measuring your self-worth by someone else's timeline. But the harsh truth is, no one's coming to save you. No one's going to push you the way you need to be pushed. If you want to elevate, evolve, and escape the cycle of mediocrity, you have to start treating your life like it's your personal mission. That begins when you make the bold decision to focus on yourself with ruthless intensity. Focusing on yourself is not about selfishness. It's about responsibility. It's about recognizing that everything you want, success, freedom, discipline, strength, peace, it all starts with Yagu. It starts with what you think, how you move, how you spend your time, and what you choose to tolerate. And the moment you start redirecting all the energy you waste on gossip, judgment, jealousy, and distractions, the moment you turn that energy inward, you become unstoppable. People waste years trying to impress others who don't matter. They bend, twist, and shrink themselves to fit into places and relationships that don't serve their growth. And they wonder why they're stuck, unfulfilled, exhausted. But when you finally decide to focus on yourself, you stop looking sideways. You stop chasing approval. You stop reacting to every little thing that doesn't align with your purpose. Instead, you wake up and ask yourself, what am I doing to become better than I was yesterday? It starts with the mind. Your thoughts shape your reality. If you're constantly feeding yourself garbage, negativity, doubt, fear, laziness, you're never going to rise. You have to guard your mental space like your life depends on it, because it does. What are you feeding your mind every day? Who are you listening to? Are you filling your brain with excuses or solutions? You become what you consume. So if you want to elevate, you need to train your mind like a warrior. That means reading. That means reflecting. That means isolating yourself when necessary so you can hear your own voice without the static of the world. Next, it moves into your body. Your body is your vehicle. It's the machine that carries you through life. If you're tired all the time, sluggish, undisciplined, it's a reflection of your internal state. When you focus on yourself, you stop treating fitness as a side hobby. You start seeing it as a non-negotiable. You train not just for aesthetics, but for strength, resilience, and mental clarity. Every workout becomes a battle you win against your weaker self. Every drop of sweat becomes a deposit in the bank of discipline. You stop doing it for validation and start doing it because it's part of who you are. Then there's your time. One of the most powerful shifts that happens when you truly focus on yourself is you start valuing your time like a currency. You realize that time is your most limited and precious resource. You stop giving it away to energy vampires, toxic environments, meaningless conversations. You become intentional with every hour. You don't just stay busy. You become productive. Every day is a brick laid toward your bigger vision. You plan. You execute. You rest strategically. You no longer waste days scrolling through other people's lives because you're too busy building your own. Focusing on yourself also means doing the internal work, the uncomfortable stuff. You confront your trauma. You deal with your insecurities. You stop blaming the past. You stop blaming your parents, your ex, your boss, or the system. You take ownership of your healing. That's when real power is born. When you realize that no matter what's happened to you, you still have the power to rise above it. That inner work isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with likes or followers, but it's what separates the talkers from the doers, the fakes from the real ones, the weak from the warriors. You also become more selective. As you focus on yourself, your standards rise. You stop settling. You stop allowing access to people who don't align with your mission. You protect your energy. You learn to say no without guilt. You start creating boundaries that reinforce your growth because you understand not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life, especially not when you're rebuilding yourself into something unstoppable. The deeper you go into self-focus, the less reactive you become. You're not triggered by opinions, hate, or judgment. You understand that the outside world will always have noise, but your inner world must be calm, controlled, and unshakable. And that comes from knowing who you are, from being locked in, from putting in the hours day after day to sharpen your mind, your body, your spirit. You become someone who doesn't just talk about change, you embody it. You move with quiet conviction, purpose, and clarity. You no longer need to explain yourself. You let your results speak louder than your words. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you're trying to become. Most people wait around hoping that one day motivation will strike them like lightning, that magical spark that will push them to change, to act, to finally commit to their goals. But motivation is unreliable. It's emotional. It's fleeting. It shows up when it feels like it, not when you need it most. That's why the people who actually win in life, in business, fitness, mental strength, personal growth, they don't rely on motivation. They're powered by discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's waking up early to work on your craft, hitting the gym when your body is sore, saying no to temptations that pull you off track, and keeping promises to yourself long after the excitement has faded. Motivation might get you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when everything in you is screaming to quit. When the hype is gone, when the struggle is real, when the results are still far away, discipline is your only lifeline. Most people live in cycles. They get inspired by a video, a quote, a speech, or a post, and suddenly they're fired up. They make a plan, hit the ground running, tell the world what they're about to do. And within a week, they're right back where they started. Why? Because motivation fades. Life gets hard. Obstacles appear. The excitement wears off. And when that happens, they have no system in place, no structure, no standard to fall back on. That's what discipline is. Your internal structure, your personal standard, the rules you follow no matter how you feel. It's what separates the amateur from the professional, the dabbler from the door, the starter from the finisher. Discipline is built, not born. It's not something you're gifted with. It's something you create brick by brick. And that process isn't glamorous. It's uncomfortable. It requires sacrifices. It requires you to do things you don't want to do repeatedly until they become part of who you are. You start by setting clear standards for yourself. You say, this is the time I wake up, no excuses. This is what I eat, no cheat days. This is how much work I put in, even when I'm tired. Those standards become your identity. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop leaving room for debate. You make it your mission to become the kind of person who does what's required. Every single day, not just when it's easy. Discipline also means training your mind to lead your body. Your body wants comfort. Your emotions want convenience. But mind, when it's trained, becomes the general that commands the troops. And the more you obey that inner general, the more powerful you become. Every time you show up when it's hard, you're not just moving forward. You're building character. You're hardening your mindset. You're learning that success isn't about hype. It's about habits. It's about consistency day after day in the face of boredom, pain, doubt, and fatigue. When you rely on motivation, you're a slave to your emotions. You only take action when you feel good. But when you build discipline, you become dangerous because now you're not just moving forward when it feels right. You're moving forward regardless. That means you'll outlast the competition. You'll show up when others quit. You'll put in the hours that others are too soft to commit to. That's where transformation happens. In the grind, in the silence, in the repetition. That's where champions are made. And here's what most people don't understand: discipline gives you freedom. It may sound like the opposite, but it's true. When you build discipline, you gain control over your life. You stop being reactive. You stop being pulled in every direction by temptations and distractions. You create structure. You create clarity. You know what needs to be done and you get it done, no matter what. That structure gives you power. Power over your time, your energy, your future. While others are scattered and stressed, you're focused and in control. While others are driven by feelings, you're driven by a mission. Discipline also builds trust with yourself. And that might be the most important thing. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce your identity as someone who follows through. That confidence compounds. You stop doubting yourself. You stop needing external validation because deep down, you know, I do what I say. I'm not hoping. I'm executing. That internal trust becomes your foundation. It carries you through storms, setbacks, failures, because you've trained yourself to keep going regardless of the outcome. You don't quit when it's tough. You dig deeper. You don't complain, you adapt, you don't fold, you fight. This is why in 2025, if you want to be great, if you want to separate yourself from the crowd, you can't be dependent on hype. You have to be forged in discipline. You have to create your routine, lock in your focus, and execute no matter how you feel, because your feelings will lie. Your mind will trick you. But discipline never fails. Discipline is the truth. Discipline is freedom. Discipline is power. Distractions are the enemy of greatness. They come in quiet and subtle forms, and they kill dreams slowly. Not all at once, but one wasted hour at a time. In 2025, distractions are louder, faster, and more seductive than ever. Social media, toxic relationships, constant notifications, mindless scrolling, empty entertainment. All of them exist to pull you away from your purpose. And if you don't take control of your mind, your environment, and your time, you'll lose yourself in a never-ending cycle of mental chaos. You won't even realize you've been distracted until weeks, months, or even years have passed. That's how it happens. not through dramatic failure, but through slow, daily neglect of what really matters. Cutting off distractions isn't just about turning off your phone or deleting apps. It's about choosing to protect your mind like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. Your focus is your currency. What you pay attention to is what grows. If you're constantly feeding your brain with garbage, opinions, gossip, and digital junk, then your future will reflect that. You won't have the clarity to chase your vision. You won't have the space to think creatively or act boldly. You'll be stuck in reaction mode, jumping from one distraction to another, letting life push you around instead of you taking command of it. People love to say they don't have time, but the truth is, it's not time they're lacking. It's focus. If you spend hours every day checking what others are doing, engaging in meaningless arguments online, or binge, watching content that doesn't feed your goals, then you're voluntarily giving your future away. You're choosing dopamine over discipline, comfort over progress, noise over clarity, and that's a dangerous way to live. When you start cutting off distractions, you start to reclaim your power. At first, it feels strange, boring even. You feel disconnected from the world. But in that silence, something powerful begins to happen. Your mind starts to slow down. You begin to think clearly. You remember what you're truly hungry for. You rediscover your mission. And more importantly, you start realizing how much time you've been wasting. You look back at the hours, days, and weeks lost in distraction, and you get pissed off. You get honest with yourself. And that's when real change begins. When you stop lying about how busy you are and start getting brutally real about how distracted you've become. One of the most overlooked distractions is people. Not just strangers online, but the people closest to you. There are people in your life who are constantly pulling you away from your growth. Friends who mock your goals. Family members who doubt your vision. Co-workers who gossip all day. These people might not be evil, but they're anchors, pulling you back to average every time you try to rise. If you truly want to evolve, you have to create boundaries. You have to get comfortable with being alone for a while. You have to be okay with people not understanding your path, because your journey is not for public approval. It's for personal transformation. And that requires isolation, focus, and fierce protection of your mental space. Technology is another massive distraction. Your phone is a tool, but for most people, it's become a trap. Every buzz, beep, and alert is designed to hijack your attention. And every time you break your focus to check a notification, you're weakening your mental muscle. You're training your brain to be distracted, impulsive, and reactive. That's why high-level performers set strict boundaries with their devices. They schedule their screen time. They remove apps. They create focus blocks because they understand that attention is the new currency. And every time you give yours away freely, you're trading future success for momentary stimulation. Cutting distractions also means mastering your internal dialogue. Sometimes the biggest distraction isn't outside. It's the voice in your head. The doubts, the fears, the negative self-talk that loops on repeat. You have to silence that noise through discipline, mental conditioning, and exposure to empowering content. Read books. Listen to leaders who speak truth. Surround yourself with a vision so powerful that your inner critic gets drowned out by purpose. Train your mind to stay locked in when the world tries to pull you off track. You also need to audit your habits. Distraction isn't just about what you do. It's about what you allow to become routine. Are you waking up and immediately grabbing your phone? Are you reacting to life instead of creating your day with intention? Are you constantly switching tasks, jumping between goals, never committing fully to one? That kind of scattered living never leads to greatness. The most successful people in any field are not just talented. They're focused. They've simplified their lives. They know what they want, and they eliminate everything that doesn't move them closer to it. That's what you need to do. When you cut distractions, you become dangerous. Your energy shifts. Your decisions get sharper. You stop being pulled in 1,000 directions and start moving like a missile, locked in, direct, intentional. People will notice the difference. You'll speak less, move with more purpose, and radiate a kind of discipline that can't be faked. You'll no longer be accessible to everyone and everything because you've realized that your time, your focus, your mind, they're sacred and they're not for sale. Pain is the greatest teacher most people run from. In a world where comfort is constantly sold, promoted, and pushed on every screen and corner, the idea of embracing pain sounds brutal, outdated, even unnecessary. But the truth is, without pain, there is no growth. Without adversity, there is no transformation. Pain forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. It reveals who you really are when the world isn't watching. It strips you of excuses and forces you to dig into the core of your strength, the kind that doesn't come from talent, opportunity, or privilege, but from endurance, grit, and raw inner power. And once you start to understand that, pain stops becoming your enemy. It becomes your fuel. Most people live their entire lives trying to avoid pain. They make decisions based on comfort, not courage. They look for shortcuts, hacks, and ways to bypass the hard work. They numb themselves with food, entertainment, distractions, relationships, anything to avoid feeling the discomfort that comes with doing something meaningful. But every time you avoid pain, you trade your potential for momentary peace. You delay growth. You weaken your ability to handle life, because life is going to hit you whether you're ready or not. And if you haven't built the capacity to deal with pain, you're going to fold. You're going to crumble under pressure, break at the first sign of resistance, and fall apart the moment things stop going your way. Using pain as fuel starts with a mental shift. You stop seeing struggle as a punishment and start recognizing it as preparation. The pain you're feeling isn't there to destroy you. It's there to strengthen you. That heartbreak, that failure, that betrayal, that loss, it's all part of the training. It's showing you what needs to be fixed, where you need to grow, and what kind of resilience you need to build. Every painful moment has something to teach you, but only if you're willing to face it head on instead of burying it under comfort. Real growth happens when you get uncomfortable, when you force yourself to stay in the fire long enough to come out hardened, focused, and sharpened. That's why some of the most successful people you'll ever meet have the darkest pasts. They've been through hell and refused to let it break them. Instead, they used every setback, every failure, every ounce of suffering as motivation to become something stronger. That pain became the spark that lit their discipline, the edge that sharpened their character, the voice in their head that said, keep going, even when it hurts. People who use pain as fuel don't complain about how hard life is. They expect it to be hard. They don't ask for things to get easier. They get tougher. They don't waste time wishing things were different. They get to work with what they have and push through anyway, because they know that avoiding pain never leads to anything worth having. Every great story, every major breakthrough, every high-level achievement, it was paid for in blood, sweat, tears, and persistence. No one escapes that process, not if they're truly chasing greatness. Pain is also a mirror. It shows you who's really in control, your excuses or your effort. When you're under pressure, the truth shows up. Are you going to quit? Are you going to make excuses? Or are you going to rise up and do what needs to be done? Pain forces that choice. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that most of the things worth having in life require some level of suffering. Whether it's the pain of training, the sacrifice of time, the discomfort of change, or the sting of letting go of toxic people and habits, using pain as fuel means taking ownership of your suffering. You stop blaming the world. You stop blaming your parents, your upbringing, your past. You stop waiting for someone to save you or apologize. You say, this is mine now. This pain belongs to me, and I'm going to turn it into something powerful. That kind of mindset can't be taught in a classroom. It's forged in silence, in struggle, in those dark nights where no one is coming and you still get up and fight anyway. That's where greatness is born, not in celebration, but in isolation. Pain also sharpens your perspective. It reminds you that comfort is temporary, but purpose lasts. It teaches you to value what really matters. Your time, your energy, your integrity, your discipline. When you've suffered deeply, you stop chasing superficial things. You start craving impact, fulfillment, strength. You become more intentional, more disciplined, more locked in. Pain clears away the noise and leaves you face to face with who you truly are and who you're meant to become. And most of all, pain humbles you. It strips away arrogance, entitlement, and fantasy. It grounds you in reality. It reminds you that no matter how strong you think you are, there's always another level to reach, another battle to fight, another layer to uncover. And that humility becomes one of your greatest weapons. Because when you're humbled by pain, you become teachable. You listen more. You learn faster. You sharpen your edge. You stop fearing discomfort and start chasing it, because you know that every step into pain is a step deeper into your potential. In a culture that glorifies instant results, constant exposure, and public validation, staying committed in the shadows feels counterintuitive. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be celebrated, liked, followed, praised. We live in a world where the appearance of success often matters more than actual success. It's become normal to showcase your plans before you execute, to announce your goals before you've earned a single result. But the truth is, the most powerful growth, the kind that transforms you from average to elite, happens in silence. It happens behind closed doors, in the early mornings when no one is awake, in the late nights when the world is asleep, in those lonely, Disciplined moments when you choose the grind over gratification. That's where the real work lies. The people who achieve long-term greatness are the ones who've mastered the art of staying committed in the dark. They don't need an audience. They don't wait for applause. They don't perform for the crowd. Their mission is internal. Their fuel doesn't come from likes, comments, or attention. It comes from the promise they made to themselves. They don't post about every workout, every page they read, every dollar they save, or every step they take. They just do the work relentlessly, quietly, until one day they're so far ahead that the world has no choice but to take notice. Staying committed in the shadows is a test of character. It forces you to answer one question over and over. Are you doing this for attention, or are you doing this for transformation? Because if you're doing it for attention, you'll burn out the moment the spotlight fades. You'll quit the moment the applause stops. But if you're doing it for transformation, if you're doing it because it's who you are and who you're becoming, then you don't need anyone to see you right now. You're too focused on becoming undeniable to worry about being visible. The shadows are where you build your foundation. It's where you fail quietly, recover without pity, and grow without noise. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to defend your progress. You just keep going. You fine-tune your discipline. You sharpen your focus. You keep stacking wins day after day with no audience and no expectation of instant reward. That level of consistency is rare. That level of commitment is what separates the few who reach greatness from the many who only talk about it. When you're committed in the dark, you develop a relationship with yourself that no one can take away. You start to trust yourself. You start to believe in your own ability to grind, to push, to sacrifice. Not because someone told you to, but because you chose it. That kind of internal confidence can't be faked. It doesn't come from motivational quotes or temporary hype. It comes from showing up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it feels like no one cares. It comes from keeping promises that no one else knows you made. And over time, that quiet consistency becomes your superpower. Most people are addicted to the need to be seen. They post every small win. They seek recognition for effort instead of results. But recognition is a trap when it's not earned. It tricks you into thinking you've arrived when you're barely out of the starting gate. That's why staying in the shadows is so powerful. It protects your process. It shields you from premature praise. It gives you space to fail, to experiment, to learn, to adapt without the pressure of performance. In the shadows, you don't have to pretend. You just get better. And when you do that long enough, something incredible starts to happen. You start becoming the version of yourself that once seemed unreachable. The sacrifices become habits. The pain becomes purpose. The routine becomes second nature. And by the time the world finally sees you, it's not a surprise to you. It's the result of everything you built when no one was watching. It's not an accident. It's not luck. It's the product of silence, focus, and relentless effort. Being committed in the shadows also gives you resilience. You learn how to keep going without applause. You build your own internal engine. You become immune to the highs and lows of public opinion. That kind of strength is rare, because when you're not dependent on recognition, you're free. You're free to fail without fear. You're free to take risks without needing validation. You're free to stay true to your vision, even when it's not trending or popular. And that freedom is where real growth begins. You stop needing external motivation because your discipline is built into your identity. You wake up and do what needs to be done, not because it's fun, not because it's easy, but because it's what you committed to. And that commitment, that ability to stay locked in when no one's watching, is what makes you unstoppable. The shadows become your training ground. Your silence becomes your shield. Your grind becomes your guide. And one day, without ever announcing it, you arrive. Not because you shouted, because you showed up over and over again, long after most people gave up. So when they finally see you winning, they'll call it sudden. They'll call it luck. They'll call it overnight. But you'll know the truth. You'll know it was built in the shadows, earned through silence and forged by discipline. In 2025, don't just speak about the life you want. Build it. Stay focused. Stay silent. Stay dangerous.